It's the Ambiguously Blind podcast with your host, a guy that's great at hearing, but terrible at listening, John Grimes.
Hey, greetings. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in and subscribing. Of course, you already know you can find our episodes anywhere podcasts are published, but did you also know that we're now in the Amazon Music section, which means we are available on the Echo devices, and you can ask Alexa to play the Ambiguously Blind podcast, and there you will find us too. In addition, we're on most of the social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. So if you roam in any of those social media circles, we'd appreciate you connecting with us and following us to keep connected with the podcast and things that are going on here too. We are also on the web at ambiguouslyblind.com, where you'll find transcript of episodes, as well as pictures, links, and other things that we talk about. In addition, you'll find a link to the merch store and our Patreon page, which are really fantastic ways to help support the channel and keep things moving here. My guest today is Kelly Walker. She hosts her own podcast called Hustle and Pro. She talks to people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area about sports and all that implies. So I thought it'd be a good idea to have her on with us and talk about sports as they pertain to me. So Kelly, thanks for stopping by to talk sports.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here to talk to you a little bit about a topic that I don't think you've covered too much in general yet, which is sports on your podcast.
No, I haven't really. We did a few episodes ago, we had the National Blind Sports Week, and we talked about some sports, but not anything really as it pertains to me personally about sports.
Well, we will today. So I have talked to you in front of my podcast audience before about some sports topics that are kind of affect you personally. But now we get to flip it around and talk to your audience and tell them your sports story. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, and this will probably be pretty quick because I don't know if my sports stories are I don't know that there's much depth to those.
There probably are.
So your podcast is the Lifestyle Frisco podcast. What is it you talk about?
Right. So let's see. I'm about 90 episodes in to talking sports. It's called Hustle and Pro. Lifestyle Frisco is the publisher here locally in the Frisco, Texas area. And so my show is a weekly show where I talk sports from youth to pro is kind of my little tagline. And so I get Frisco ISD student athletes in and talk about what they've, experienced so far, maybe if they've committed or signed to go play in college, and we just talk to them about just how they juggle their life. And then we have so many professional sports here in town that I'm lucky enough to get to work with those teams and get professional athletes in the studio. And so we talk to Texas Legends basketball players. They're the Mavs minor league team, basically. And I talk to FC Dallas players, which is our MLS soccer team. And they have a development team also that I get to talk to those players. And I talk to the Frisco Rough Riders, which is the Texas Rangers minor league team. So we have a lot, and there's even the Dallas Stars are here. We have a new rugby team coming. We have all kinds of stuff here in Frisco. So I just talk to people who either play sports or used to play sports or whatever it is about their sports interests. And we just chat, and it's awesome. I love it.
Who is the coolest person or maybe conversation you've had?
Well, I do have a favorite.
Besides me, obviously.
Well, yes, your episode definitely tops the charts so far. My pro athlete favorites, so Reggie Cannon is one of my favorites. And he's kind of one of the bigger names that I've interviewed. He at the time was an FC Dallas player, and he plays for the U.S. men's national team. And he has, several months ago has moved on to play in Portugal. So he's no longer an FC Dallas guy, but he's a homegrown local kid. And back when I interviewed him, he was probably 20, I think he just turned 21. But that was a fun interview. I'd been a fan of his for a few years already. So it was fun to just get him in the studio and pick his brain and hear his goals about wanting to go play in Europe. So watching him then proceed after that and, kind of get to fulfill some of his goals and dreams now is really fun to watch. So Reggie Cannon is one of my tops. But then even some of the younger kids, Hannah Mandel, my student athlete, she's kind of my favorite interview because she was a soccer player also here from Wakeland High School. And just to hear how poised and goal-oriented this young lady was really impressive. And I've since watched her go off and play college soccer, and the things she's going to accomplish are pretty amazing. So those are a couple of my faves so far.
And I think it's sports that has created a friendship between you and I. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it does. It all goes back to, I think I've said soccer now 3 times. So it really goes back to soccer, because the connection that you and I have is, well, my husband, who was your roommate back in college at Texas Tech. But the first memories that I think about knowing you guys was on the soccer field when we were playing intramural soccer, to co-ed intramural. And so, like, that's literally the first time I remember even seeing my husband, Ryan Walker, was during a soccer game, because he showed up at halftime once. And so, yeah, you were on that team. And so we had other mutual friends on that team. But yeah, soccer is how you and I originally started to know each other.
So it is the soccer that binds us.
Yep, it is. It is. But then we also played other intramural sports together. Well, I'm not sure if together. So you coached me in a couple sports, right? But I don't know if we actually were on the same team as players together, except for soccer.
We were on the same team as soccer players, yeah, only. I don't think there was a co-ed basketball team. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we coached basketball and flag football.
There was a co-ed softball team, but I don't think you and I were on the same team. I think you were in the stands with Ryan watching 1 or 2 of those games, possibly, but I don't think you were on that team, right?
No, for some reason, I've never been a big softball player. I don't know why, but I don't know why. I was not on the softball team. So,
do you remember the infamous game when I thought you were there? I don't know if you remember this or not. It was October of 97 when I got hurt.
1997. Kelly, that was a long time ago.
I know. I mean, I can't forget it because I got really hurt, but Ryan remembers it because he was sitting there watching, which I just assumed you were probably with him watching also. I think it was actually one of y'all's mutual friend, Kevin's team, who I was on their team or something. I don't know. Can't remember that part of it. But yeah, I got knocked out. I got hit in the head really hard with the softball that night and got knocked out cold. And my sister, Sarah, took me to the emergency room. I had been in college for a month and got hurt.
It's a great introduction to college life.
Yeah, it was so embarrassing.
What happened?
I had a huge lump on my head. Well, I was a base runner, and safety wasn't top of mind so much, I guess. So I don't think we wore helmets. And I was a base runner on first. The ball got hit into center field. Center fielder got it to the second baseman quick enough to where he thought he could turn a double play. He catches the ball and turns to throw it to first, but I'm a yard away from him. So his throwing it to first to get me out as a runner hit me in the head, before he even kind of let go of it. It's almost like he punched me in the face, but with the ball in his hand.
Yikes.
If that makes sense. Yeah. Yep. The stitches cut my head open, knocked me out. It was memorable.
And I guess the runner at first was safe then.
Yeah, sure. Probably. Man, I wish I knew who was on that team. All I know was my sister. But yeah, I don't know who else was on that team.
Was it co-ed?
I just had one yeah, it was for sure co-ed because the guys who hit me for sure. Right. Yeah. I just had one bloody Kappa Delta sorority t-shirt to show for it and a big giant lump on my head for a while. But anywho, I know you're not here to hear my softball injury stories.
Well, not because it's not interesting, but more of it's because it's because of a downer. We don't want to hear about the injury stories, right?
Well, the good news is I bounced back. I still play softball for fun, even as a 40-something-year-old. So it has a good ending. But I want to know more about so like we just said, we met each other at Tech, happened to be on a soccer field playing intramurals. But I don't know much about your, time playing sports before that. I just assume you played all the normal childhood sports that maybe my husband played growing up with you. But so what did you play as a kid or love the most sports-wise?
Soccer was probably the one I played the most. So that should be no surprise to you. But I also played baseball and basketball. I was kind of tall for my age. Yeah. So that kind of lent me to basketball, although I was not that good at basketball. I did play, and it was fun. I played, thinking if there was anything else. So basketball,
Basketball
baseball.
through like middle school? Because I'm assuming at Plano you guys went to a competitive high school basketball, right?
I did not play basketball at the high school level for the school. I did play in the rec leagues in the city. So we had
Oh,
between the YMCA and
yeah.
in where I was growing up, the city sports authority had the city leagues. So yeah, I played through high school. I played basketball,
Oh, good. Okay, I didn't realize that.
and
So
I
you say
played,
you weren't very good.
which is
That
why I
means
was the
you
coach. I was
probably were.
qualified to be the coach in college
Well,
because
yeah. I mean,
so much
yeah,
basketball experience, right?
sure. You
And
gotta.
but baseball, I probably stopped playing baseball. I want to say at the end of middle school. So
Yeah,
I didn't play baseball after middle school, but I continued to play soccer and basketball
that's a
through high
pretty
school.
normal cutoff for baseball to play through middle school because then you get that. Okay, am I competitive enough to play for my high school? But if you aren't, the rec leagues kind of water down and stop really. I don't know. They sort of stop happening. At least nowadays, that's how baseball is. So that's pretty normal, I think, to baseball fizzle out after
But
middle
there
school.
are lots of basketball, at least back, for me when I was doing it, there was very competitive soccer leagues outside of high school, and there
Mm-hmm.
were pretty competitive basketball leagues outside of high school in our
Yeah.
area. So yeah, we played those pretty regularly. I never played football.
I was going to say, I didn't hear football, which
No,
is, another one I would maybe assume. You never, even Pee Wee, like little kid
no,
football?
no. I ran track in high school, or sorry, in middle school.
Okay.
I'm not fast, so
You're not fast.
I ran the 800 meter and the mile.
And it was short lived because you were not super fast at it.
No, I was not
I
very good. In
never got
fact,
into running ever at middle
I don't
school.
like
I
running.
went,
It's like you've seen the movie Anchorman, right?
sure,
Where Ron Burgundy's
Ron
explaining
Burgundy.
explaining yogging, where you just go running for no apparent reason. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's that's kind of the way I feel about running. So unless I'm running from a bear or something, or my kids, there's
Right.
really no reason to run
Just for the heck of it.
for the heck of it.
Yeah.
So interestingly, though, when I was in middle school, it's probably sixth grade. It was our first track meet, and I'm running the half mile and the mile. And I remember the bus ride to the track meet. I don't remember what I was eating, but it was something, probably candy or some sort of snack or something. And I got about a lap and a half through the
Hmm.
2 lap 800-meter race and lost the contents of my snacks
Mm,
on the track.
nice.
Yeah, I hadn't quite figured that part out yet, but it was pretty fun.
Yeah, I don't just like recreationally run either. I never got into running as a sport when I was younger. I went to a K through 8 private school growing up, and so I guess the sports offered were probably just limited, and we weren't, we had the basics, but not track was never on my radar. And so I never really learned how to be a good runner. And so as an adult, I try to run for exercise, but I don't enjoy it. But when you said that, it reminded me. Ryan always laughs that the only time he's running is if he's running after a ball on a soccer field, and then he can run forever. What seems like forever. He's conditioned to run after a soccer ball, but not just out in the street. Like if I say, "Hey, you want to go on a jog?" He's like, "What are you even talking about? Why?"
Yeah, I can relate to that. So I don't like to run either, and I've explained that to other people. But when you're playing soccer, I mean, you end up running a ton in soccer, and
Oh
so if you
yeah,
add up all the running you do, it's a lot. So that seems like it's productive running to me.
right.
Just going
Yeah.
out
Well,
to get some
it's
fresh
functional.
air,
You're
or
you're running after something. You're moving in a certain direction for a reason, and you're sprint. You're starting and stopping. One year, I bought him a chip that goes in your cleats that you can then. It's like USB where you can put it in your computer and it'll tell you your stats. They're really popular now, but back when we did this, it would chart his running in a game and tell you your burst speed and how many miles you ran during that time period. And so it was interesting because sometimes he would run like 7 miles in a game.
yeah,
And
I
you just
believe
don't
it.
feel like you just did that. But if you're playing two 45-minute halves in a full blown soccer game, and you're a midfielder like he is, you run the whole time. You're just constantly on the go. What position did you play when you played soccer?
I was usually defense. Yeah, defense would be generally what it was. Sometimes I played striker, forward.
Oh, okay.
Maybe a little bit of midfield, but I was mostly defense, mostly like, I think it was, I don't know if they still call it this or not, but it was a sweeper.
Uh-huh.
Was generally where I hung out. I was the last resort.
I still call it sweeper. Stopper is another one. I mean, there's so many. That's the funny thing about soccer. There's so many terms for each position. It's kind of funny because it depends on sort of the era in which you grew up, what you call different positions.
And I don't know why. It's probably because of my skill set was why I was in that position. But I'm not generally a defensive guy. I would prefer to be on offense.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I had the finesse with my feet to be a very productive striker. But as I aged, I seemed like I was in defense. But as a kid, very little kid, 5, 6, 7 years old, I did score a lot of goals back in those days. But
nice.
I didn't age well. My offensive prowess didn't age well, apparently.
Didn't keep up. Yeah.
But I did like foiling the other offensive guys. That was a lot of fun. But a sport that we haven't talked about, which I don't know if that really wasn't a sport for me, was cycling. I think we'll talk about this later too, but I did ride bikes, as kids do, quite a bit as a youngster.
Yeah, just like neighborhood bike gangs with your friends, getting into trouble.
Yeah. And my dad was big into biking, and he would ride on he would take long rides. There was, where we're from in Ohio, there's a race called TOSRV, TOSRV, Tour of Scioto River Valley.
Oh.
So it's kind of like the Tour de France, but it's in this little southern part of Ohio, and I don't know how many miles it is, but it's a 2-day race, and you start they started in Columbus, which is the capital, and rode, I'm guessing about 80 miles.
Wow.
To an end point, and then they stayed there and then rode back the next day.
Wow, that's pretty big time.
Yeah, and my dad has done that a few times. So he would, I can remember him doing that. So we would always bike a lot. My brother and my dad and I, we would go out on bike rides a lot. So in addition to just goofing around with my buddies, we did some biking too.
So yeah, you were at a little higher level than the old neighborhood bike gang. If you actually had a dad that was, a cyclist and knew how to cycle 80 miles, and that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, he was.
Okay, what about rollerblading? No, this was big, and when you were growing up.
Well, I was kind of on so my brother did that, who's a few years younger than me, and he had rollerblades. I didn't, but I could squeeze into his occasionally, and I did that. I did roller skate a lot. I mean, we had a skating rink as well where we were growing up, so we did a lot of roller skating. But rollerblading, I never have owned a pair of rollerblades. I've been in them before, and my brother went on to play hockey and stuff too, which kind of lends itself to rollerblading.
Oh yeah, sure. You gotta know how to rollerblade or skate if you're going to play hockey.
Never really did rollerblades, though.
What about skateboarding?
No. I think I did have a skateboard. I had a Back to the Future skateboard.
Nice.
Which will tell you
awesome.
Everything you need to know about skateboarding, because the people that were real skateboarders did not have a Back to the Future skateboard.
Yeah, that might have been a little gimmicky, a little too obvious.
They had,
I don't know
what they had, but it wasn't a Back to the Future skateboard. But we all, speaking of baseball,
what it was? What they all had were the build your own kind, where you buy like the pieces. And
it was the board.
I don't know all the pieces. I was not a skateboarder, but they would build their own to make it like hardcore. Yeah,
what I remember would be like the board with basically like gritty kind of sandpaper stuff on the top, but it was covered in stickers and stuff on the bottom and other
the graffiti looking.
Yes. Yeah. So no, I wasn't a big skateboarder, although I had one, but no.
Me neither.
But speaking of baseball though, we played a lot of wiffle ball.
Oh yeah, sure.
And I mean
Wiffle
a
balls,
lot of wiffle ball.
like backyard type of wiffle
Yes,
ball. Yeah.
yes. Where I was growing up in Ohio, we had much bigger backyards than we have here in Texas, in North Texas. And we would play, we had about 4 or 5 venues in the neighborhood, and wiffle ball was a big player.
Wiffle ball is awesome because you can swing as hard as you want, but the only bad parts are if the sting of the ball, if you get hit on your skin, or hitting it over a fence and having to go ask a neighbor to get your
Yeah,
ball
like the
back or
whole
something.
sandlot issue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love Sandlot. I just recorded a podcast episode about favorite sports movies, and Sandlot was on my list. And I actually realized my top 5 were all baseball movies. So it was kind of funny doing my list because I thought, oh, they'll be all over the place. But once I actually narrowed them down, I apparently most enjoy watching baseball movies.
I think I'm the same way. What are your top 5?
Oh, I don't have my notes in front of me, but okay, off the top of my head, Field of Dreams is a favorite because I know it's unrealistic but I like the magical part of it, and I love James Earl Jones's voice and all. I love the whole thing. I love all of it. A League of Their Own is top because I've always played softball, and I just think it's a cool story of watching those ladies play. 42 is on my list. It's a hard to watch movie sometimes, right? But it's important, and every year near Jackie Robinson's birthday, I do see it when it's on TV. I stop and watch it, and I try to make my kids watch it with me because it's important. Sandlot because it's cute. I just think it's a funny movie. And just the love of baseball is cool. And Moneyball is one of my top lists because once I started to kind of learn about the numbers part and the statistical part of baseball and learn about the story of that movie, I just thought it was cool. So I like that one too. But I have a ton. There's a ton, but those are my top baseball movies.
I seem to like baseball movies too. I think I told you on when we spoke last on your podcast that Bull Durham was my favorite sports movie. It's just classic.
So on this episode that I was just talking about, our mutual friend Brandon May was my co-host. I wouldn't say guest because I've had him. He sits in with me sometimes to help me out with his, as you know, his basketball knowledge. He helps me and when we interview basketball guys sometimes. But Brandon's favorite movie of all time was also Bull Durham.
Really?
Yep, you guys have that in common.
I knew I liked that guy.
I know. And then we had 3 of us in. Our other coworker Daniel, his favorite sports movie was Space Jam.
Space Jam. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and he gave a very compelling argument as to why he loved Space Jam and why we shouldn't have laughed at him when he said Space Jam. But anywho, sports movies, whole nother podcast, John.
Yeah, we could probably talk a few hours about that.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
Maybe next time.
Yes. Okay, so I know the sports that you've played when you were little. Then how did that mature as you matured? What did you like to keep playing the most? As we just talked about, I knew you were playing soccer and intramurals when we got to tech, but what did you keep up with the most?
Keep up from a playing perspective?
Well, I guess both, playing and watching. I mean, those are the 2 parts of it.
Yeah, I stuck with soccer probably the most. I never really got into softball, and baseball kind of faded away in middle school. But I would guess that soccer and basketball were the ones that I really stuck with the longest.
Then as far as watching goes, I mean, you were always a football watcher or no?
Yes,
Yeah.
always a football watcher. But I think probably the sport that I like to watch the most is baseball.
You don't hear that every day. I love to watch baseball too.
Yeah, I don't know why that is, but there's something about a baseball game.
Yep. There's a lot of people that can't watch baseball games. They think it's too slow and boring, but I like when I'm really wanting to watch a game, like I love every, second in between when they're watching, just talking about pitch count and different pitches they're going to throw and watching the guys lead off and just all the different nuances of the sport. I love really getting to focus on and watch a game. I haven't lately because when the Rangers aren't playing well, they're my team. I'm from Texas and have always lived here, so I'm a Rangers fan. So when they're not playing well, especially seasons like 2020, it was really hard to like sit down and really be like totally into a full game. But when they have good seasons and there's something to entice me to really get in and watch every game, I love it.
And also regarding baseball, I think I would really get into they have the Sunday night game on ESPN. It was always a good game.
Hmm.
And it was interesting because I like football too, but I found myself not being interested in Monday Night Football as much in the last, say, 10 years. Just for whatever reason, I don't know why, but football, I the teams I like to follow, but then the Monday Night Football game, if it wasn't a team I was interested in, I didn't really want to watch it. But Sunday
Same
Night
here.
Baseball for me, for some reason, always seemed like an intriguing matchup. It was always a good thing, so I could always remember wanting to sit down and watch the Sunday Night Baseball game.
Yeah, same here with certain football games. Unless it's my team, I sometimes can't get into it. Unless it's a big storyline and it's a big rival game, or I don't know, some playoff implication or something major happening. Or just a player that you like really watch. Like I'll watch Chiefs games now because I'm a Mahomes fan and I just want to see what he's up to and that kind of thing. But overall, I'm pretty much just going to be watching the Cowboys and whoever they're up against it that week. So what about you though? Splitting time between a couple states growing up, what's your football flavor?
Well, my primary football flavor would be the Cincinnati Bengals.
Hmm.
And pretty close to that would be the Dallas Cowboys. But for the last 15 to 20 years, that's been some pretty tough watching and following. Actually,
Indeed.
longer for the Bengals. The Bengals were in the Super Bowl, I think, in 1986, 7 or 8. I don't remember what year it was.
Yeah, you've had some dry spells then. But hey, it always comes around. So you've put in a lot of time as both of those fans. So when yours rolls around, you could get hit with like some really good football years for both of your teams here pretty soon.
That's
not
wishful
really
thinking.
soon, but
Yeah. So like if the Bengals were there, let's just say 87. Of course they lost. Joe Montana beat them in the Super Bowl. And then like skip forward about 3 or 4 years later, then the Cowboys start just knocking it out. So those three early 90s Cowboys teams were just, that's in the age group that I was in, that was just unbelievable.
That was it. Yeah. 93, 4, 5 or 3, 4, 6.
3, 4, 6. But there has not been anything for the Bengals or the Cowboys since.
Yeah. Playoff game here and there, but
occasionally
nothing to write home about.
No.
Yeah, it's tough, but that's why we stick with sports, because it's not always, unless you're in Boston or LA lately, it's not always winning all the time, right? You stick with it in hopes that your team comes around, because there's always a chance. There's always a chance that next season something could happen. So we always go back and keep watching.
It's a lot like life, you don't win every time.
Right, but you got to go back and see if you can get better. So when you're talking about football and watching, so like I'm curious, consuming sports in person, like, okay, ignore the fact that we're not really able to be in person at sports like we would the rest of our lives right now. Ignoring that, how do you feel about consuming sports in person versus TV or listening to the radio?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So that certainly has changed for me since with the visual changes that I've had.
Right.
And I would love to go to sporting events prior to vision change. So we did have season tickets to those Cowboy years. So I was at a lot of those games, and Dallas Cowboys, Texas Rangers, the Dallas Stars, all the Dallas teams, and couldn't get enough of that. It was just it was awesome, especially at the age I was. But after vision loss, it's not as exciting to be there, mostly because I can't see what's going on.
Yeah.
So, like, let's take, for example, a Cowboys game. What I typically would do, and I've been to some Cowboys games after vision change, so For
Oh, you
me,
have.
yeah, for me, I'm there for the excitement of being there,
Mm-hmm.
and I can see, I've talked about in previous episodes, I've talked about kind of my visual acuity and how that translates to what I can actually see, because it's really tough to describe, which is why I call myself ambiguously blind.
Right.
And being in a sporting arena, a football game or a basketball game or any game, I really can't get a good feel for. I usually feed off of the, like, if it's a basketball game, if I'm at the home team's arena and everybody
Mm-hmm.
goes nuts after somebody throws the ball up, then I just assume they made it, right?
Right, right. But I mean, I can imagine though, after vision loss, being at a Cowboys game. I mean, that's a sport where, as a spectator, you're watching and paying attention to, first down marker, and like those are small details far away from you that to really kind of enjoy each drive, like you need to be aware of how far are they going? How far did they just go? And you probably sitting in the stands can't see that and take that in, right? So then you're just waiting to hear the reactions.
Right. Did he catch that? Did the tight end really throw a bad block, or was it really holding, or what was this person doing? So I rely totally on the PA system, to kind of know what's going on. But the thing that I
Yeah.
would do really to make it more palatable for me is I would bring a radio. So I'd have,
Mm,
you've seen those people in the stands. It happens a lot more in baseball games, I think. But you
mhm.
see the people in the stands that are there, but they've got their headphones on because they're
Right.
listening to the play-by-play. So for me to go to any event, I need to have the radio broadcast in my ears,
Okay.
or it's really meaningless for me to be there. So I will fight through the traffic to get there, all the sea of people coming and going, pay $40 for a Coke, and
Right.
really not consume much of actually what's going on if I don't have access to the play by play or whatever. So
I mean, that makes total sense. Even me, I have no, visual challenges of seeing anything out there. Going to a Cowboys game isn't that great. I prefer watching them on TV so that I can watch at my own pace. I can hear the announcers. I can see the replays. And it's one of those sports that it's not as all it's cracked up to be being in person for me. Other sports I enjoy it more. I love being at a Rangers game. We go to every FC Dallas home game. Like there are like I do not like watching soccer on TV when I'm a season ticket holder and know how it feels to be, a few rows up and seeing all the nuances and hearing the ball hit their cleats and everything. But yeah, I can't even imagine why you would want to be there at a Cowboys game.
yeah, I would say, just to kind of understand what it is, just imagine you're there and just kind of close your eyes
Mhm.
and see what you take in. Now, there's lots of stuff to take in. Don't get me wrong. So there's
Sure.
lots of things to hear and other things like that. But if you have the play by play in your ear, it makes it light years ahead. But I will say, play by play is not equal among sports either.
Mm.
I don't know exactly why. Maybe because it's been broadcast so much or so long on a play by play basis. It's baseball. I'm a Texas Rangers fan too, and will listen to lots of Texas Rangers games. And the great Eric Nadel,
Mhm.
I don't know what it is. I mean, he's got a soothing voice and a great sound and all that kind of stuff, and his knowledge and everything is really great. But really, I think any baseball broadcaster they go through so minute details of things
Mhm.
that the other sports do not. I can remember, I can just hear Eric Nadel saying the color of the piping on the pants of the team that's playing,
Yeah,
and
giving you such a description that you
you can
can
see
paint
it.
that picture in
Yeah,
your
you
head.
can you
Yeah.
can see it in your head. So you can see the font of the team's name or logo on their jersey and what colors they are, and It gives you details about what the pitcher's doing, how he's holding
Yeah, I
the
was gonna say
ball.
the
And
breeze
yeah,
of the air, the every like it's just
they
a
give you
story. They
so
tell you
much
the
information.
story.
They give you so
Yeah,
much information. So
for sure.
baseball is really a pleasure to listen to, not to mention the fact that, baseball is a talking sport anyway, because there is a
Hmm.
lot of downtime. So there's so much stuff or so much time to fill that they give you all those details. And I really like listening to baseball. I like watching baseball on TV, and I really like listening to baseball. And even if I'm going to be at a game, I think the one I would like to be at the most would be a baseball game
Hmm.
because of the amount of detail I can get through
Yeah,
the
so
play-by-play.
that's how I grew up. My dad watched Rangers games on the TV, but listened to them on the radio and
Yes.
muted the TV. And that's just sort of how I grew up. And those are the voices that I was used to hearing and the descriptions and just the way it was delivered. That's what I'm kind of was used to. And that's why I love baseball so much is because we watched every sport in our household, but there's so much baseball to be watched that it feels like there was always a baseball game on. Okay, but you said something a while ago that I wanted to ask you about as far as listening in. What about like NASCAR and sports like that are really designed for fans to be like listening in on the team's wavelength even? Have you ever gotten into that?
Oh, just a little bit. For some reason, I'm not a big NASCAR guy. I don't I don't hate it, but I'm not a hater, but I'm not a lover either. So
Yeah.
no. And I've been to some NASCAR races, and if people think baseball is boring, I don't know what to tell you about a NASCAR race. I mean, they go around in circles, and I think they're obviously very talented, and they do to do what they do, especially at the speed and the proximity there. Going 80 to 120 miles an hour within inches of another car. That's pretty amazing. And at the
Yeah.
angles and things of those turns. But no, I've never
I
really gotten into
agree.
it.
It's amazing and I give them all the props, but I don't get it either. I don't get when you are like when the people around us. I think we IndyCar and NASCAR. There's a couple of things we've been here at Texas Motor Speedway, but I don't really get what they're listening for when they have their headphones on and they're listening to the feed. Like I guess they're listening to the guys communicate with each other with pit stops and different things, but it just I've never really dove into it enough to really fully like understand and embrace it. But Formula One, I've sort of paid more attention to the last few years, and it's very interesting to me. I could see how I don't think I'm going to get into Formula One as a grown adult, but I could see how that would be a really interesting sport to follow as somebody who can you can listen in to what their actual strategy is in real time as they're racing.
Yeah, I see how that would be cool. And I've heard some of those, the talk, the chatter between the drivers and the pit crews and all those and the spotters and those guys. And it's cool and it's interesting to me for a little bit, but I just can't get into racing like that.
What about the ticket? So I consume a lot of my sports information via the ticket. I don't consume sports when they're doing coverage of certain things. If they happen to be doing post game shows, I don't really consume it that way. But just on like my everyday daytime listening, I get a lot of my sports info from there. Are you a ticket listener?
Yes, I'm a P1.
Yes, me too. So do you understand like when they're so when they're talking about like the Masters, that's sort of top of mind lately. And when they're talking about Hail Mary throws and they do a 15-minute segment on, a specific play or something, and it's something that you couldn't see yourself because maybe you don't watch golf because I don't know, or maybe you didn't see the football game, depending on how well you can see plays on your TV. Do you like it when that happens on the ticket, or do you tune out because you're like, I don't know, I didn't consume it as visually as they did?
Well, I don't know. I guess that depends on specifically what it is. Generally, I won't leave the ticket because of generally it's not because they're talking about something I'm not interested in, because they generally are pretty on point for what I'm interested in. But even if I couldn't see it because of my vision, oftentimes, especially in life recently, I don't see a lot of sports anyway because there's too many other things going on. So there's a pretty good chance I haven't seen a play they're talking about anyway. But generally speaking, I think because they're in an audio medium, I think they do a pretty good job of describing what they're talking about, assuming that some people, or maybe many people, haven't seen the play. So I can generally pick up on those things. I don't feel left out in that regard.
Good. Yeah, I was curious because I've either usually seen what they're talking about, or I'll go pull it up and, if it's something I'm really curious about what they're talking about. Okay, I want to circle back though. When you mentioned cycling, so what about like Tour de France? Are you watching that unfold when that's happening in the summers?
No.
Okay.
I'm a fair weather fan, so when Lance Armstrong's winning 6 in a row, doping or not, I'm watching. That was the height of my Tour de France consumption. I mean, it happens in July each year. So when I'm watching sports channels like, ESPN or on the ticket listening to it, I'm interested in what they say about it, but I'm not going to go watch the time trials or the certain days recaps, or I'm not going after the information, but when it's there, I'm interested in what it is, I guess.
Yeah,
so basically the highlights.
For me, cycling something like that, it's like highlights only. Hit the high points. Did something dramatic happen? Did somebody take over? Did somebody fall? Like what was the drama about it, or the high points? And that's about it for me. But it's interesting. I think that's a really interesting sport. I've just never gotten into it competitively like that. So I'm just a very, very watered down fan. But biking in general. So I want to ask you about that, because when you were on my podcast, we talked about that a lot. How I was surprised to know that seems like something you're kind of getting back into this day and age. So tell me, what's the most recent in your biking experiences?
Yeah, so I have recently started biking through the lockdown process. We've had a lot of time to spend at home, maybe too much. So we're trying to find things to do, and we've got some kiddos at home, and we've got to figure out something to do with them. Not that we wouldn't be doing this anyway, but it just kind of seemed to be the right time for us to start doing biking, and they took to it. And all of a sudden we've got some bikers in the house, and mom and dad now have to keep up with that. It was pretty easy when they were on a tricycle or a balance bike. You could mostly keep up with them, but after they get training wheels off and on 2 wheels, it's and as I mentioned, I don't like running, so I'm certainly not going to run after that as well. So we started going into some biking and quickly realized that we needed some bikes of our own. And my wife Erin and we didn't have bikes, and I don't know really why she didn't, other than she just doesn't ride bikes. And for me, I think I didn't have one. I don't know that I thought I couldn't ride them. I certainly have done a lot of bike riding in my life, but since vision change, I really haven't ridden a bike.
Well, you probably it wasn't something you expected to be doing. So it's not like you're going to just have a bike laying around. I mean, a lot of us, when you leave your childhood area, you don't really have a bike. I got a bike in college because we lived so close to campus, but of course it was something so cheap, you leave it there. Then when you go and you get your adult life started, a bike isn't typically one of the first things you go invest in and just hang on to for 20 years. So you only get it when you feel the need to invest in one that you're going to be riding around for a while. So it doesn't surprise me that you wouldn't have one.
That's probably how I would describe kind of what happened with us. And we got a bike for Erin, and she really liked riding it. And one day I decided I would try to take it for a spin. And the old saying is true: you never forget how to ride a bike. So I rode it, and very quickly really liked the sensation. I mean, the feel of moving at that speed, and the ability to get from, say, one end of the block to the other in a much faster pace, and the autonomy of just being able to go. So
yeah, the freedom. There's something about riding a bike, right? There's just some feeling.
Oh yeah, the wind blowing through my hair. kind of a joke.
Coasting.
Yeah. So we got her bike, and she was riding a lot. And so, of course, I started riding. And then we had an issue because we only had one bike and there was two of us. So then as it turned out, I got a bike, and I've been going pretty bananas with biking. And for me, it's really been, in addition to just the coolness of biking for whatever or the exercise element of biking and the activity level, which is good. I've really done a lot of exploring around my neighborhood because of, I don't drive.
Mm-hmm.
So there are parts of just areas that I just haven't been to. I mean, I've been there, but because we're in the car moving faster than we are, or we're walking or something, just walking through the neighborhood, I don't really get the time to go exactly where I want to go, when I want to go there, and see exactly what I want to see, or look at something in particular. So I've pretty much explored every square inch of our neighborhood now. Up and down the streets and through the fields and up and down the alleys and through the construction sites. And
that's awesome.
I've been pretty active. Yeah.
Yeah. Your childhood, exploring bike gang got to come back out, and it is fun to go into the crevices of your neighborhood that you can't access with a car, and just sort of see where this creek goes, or where this path goes, or what's back here. And, it's go in between places that you just never go. There's something very interesting about it. So that's awesome that you're out there exploring and biking.
And for me, it's exhilarating and really terrifying from second to second, because I haven't had any close encounters yet, but
that's good.
It's I've only stayed within our neighborhood. So, it's a pretty good sized neighborhood. That I've been in the streets. I try to stay in the street, occasionally in the sidewalks, but so there's lots of cars, but nothing like the main streets. So I hope to venture out, and I actually have crossed some pretty major streets into other neighborhoods, and there are appropriate crosswalks available. So I'm confident I can do that without issue. I think I've had my bike for about 3 months now, and after a few weeks, or maybe a week or so of riding it, I got a tracking app on my phone. And so since I've got the tracking app installed, I'm about 200 miles of biking, according to the app.
That's a lot. That sounds like a lot.
Well, considering I've rode 0 miles for the last 20 years, roughly. 200 miles in about a, about a 3-month time period. 200 miles is pretty extraordinary.
I'd say that's a pretty good increase.
Yeah, it's a pretty dramatic change.
Your pace is high.
I don't know how long I can maintain that.
Just promise me that if you do venture out to the big roads and you're going on like these really big multi-lane roads, that you have a buddy. I just feel like you need a buddy with you. I feel like that with any biker, anybody cycling around.
Yeah, buddies are always good, especially in the cycling or running world. So, because things can happen too. I mean, I've even had where my chains come loose and I've had to, try to fix it. So that stuff happens. But there's a coffee shop about that they would require a crossing of the street 2 ways. Mm-hmm. That is on my list of things to do.
Do it.
Pretty soon. Yeah.
Just take a friend or Aaron.
Well, the problem is I really can't take Aaron.
I can come sit with your family and you guys can go get your coffee. You can go on a biking coffee date.
I would love to do that. I mean, we've talked about it, but there's just so many things that have to happen for that small of a little activity really to make sense. So
I know.
Yeah, we really can't go biking together right now. I mean, we go together as a family. But as you know, with having kids, especially depending upon their ages, it isn't really always a lot of biking that happens at our age. It's a lot of standing still and whining and water talking, and looking and
readjusting. Yep, I get that. I remember that. All right, so I'm talking about being worried about you going out on your own to take on that adventure. Have there been any times when you have like with your vision loss, when you have been like actually worried or feared for your safety when you're doing something sporty, or has that come up?
Yeah, it has. Probably somewhat regularly. I mean, depends on what kind of sport you're talking about. I mean, watching a movie can be can be a sport. If you remember Chris Arnold, as we're talking about the ticket, but nobody else will get that reference, so maybe I should cut that part out. Crossing the street, walking your dog, things can happen. So that's always in the back of my mind with really anything. But as it pertains to sporting, like at an event, yeah, it's not. So sometimes I find it difficult, especially like coming and going from a game. The massive amount of people that are moving, so it's hard for me to kind of navigate in a large swarm of people. That would be true for any crowd. So, but at a sporting event, like it's usually when it's over, it's usually the biggest because everybody's leaving at the same time. So generally I will try to leave early or stay late, generally stay late so I can see what's going on unless the game's out of hand or something. But I do remember
the crowd thin out before you try to.
Yeah, it's just not fun, just kind of pinballing in between a bunch of people. And I mean, people bump into people all the time. That's not really a big deal. But I seem to do it an extraordinary amount of times when I'm. And plus, it's just kind of, it's mentally taxing for me to be so concerned about not doing that it's just like I just rather wait kind of thing. Right. So that's one of the things you got to be aware of if you're going to a sporting event with me, that would be something I would try to avoid, would be the mass exodus or being in a long or big group of people, I guess would be the case. But I can also remember really pretty vividly one of the first sporting events I went to after my vision change happened in 1998 was a Texas Rangers game. And it was during the summer of that year after I was home recuperating, and my dad and I went to a Rangers game and really hadn't considered anything about being at a game. I was pretty excited to go because it was summer and it was baseball, and I like watching baseball. And I can remember I didn't have my radio, so that was one thing that I later learned would have made things better. I wasn't even considering that. But it was more or less just going and getting out of the house and being out there. So we went to the game, and I really didn't. The radio thing would have helped things, the enjoyment of the game. But I was so concerned with getting hit by a foul ball that it ruined the game for me. And I think, I remember correctly, I'd have to ask my dad, but I think we moved once or twice because I just was so uncomfortable. Now, the possibility of getting hit with a foul ball is very small. But
yeah, it is. But
the fact that I was adjusting to this new vision field that I had, and what I could and couldn't see, and what my limitations were, and all that kind of stuff, I just had this irrational fear of being hit, and it really was tough for me to sit there. It wasn't fun.
Well, but I bet that goes back to you saying how much baseball you've watched and how much you enjoy it and you get into it. I mean, watching a lot of baseball or listening to a lot of baseball growing up, I mean, yes, it doesn't happen to everybody every game, but at all those fans in there, somebody gets hurt every so often, but and remember seeing how fast a foul ball goes into the stands, right? And if you're sitting in a spot where there's a lot of line drives going at you, you just know that from watching so much baseball. So sitting there not being able to spot a ball coming at you that fast, I could totally see how that would get in your head and kind of it would give me anxiety if I knew that there could be a ball coming off a bat, yet I can't be sure that I'm going to see it coming at me. It'd be really hard to sit and enjoy the game.
Yeah, that was not a fun experience, but it also reminds me, too, of my love for watching baseball, too, was later, within a year or two later, I'm back in Lubbock at Texas Tech University, and we're watching baseball at the college level. We're watching games. And we were fortunate enough, me and about 4 or 5 of my knucklehead friends were fortunate enough we had tickets to the baseball games, and the team was pretty good during those years. So they were fun games to go to also. But there was this section, so for me, I need to really be close to the action for the best effort for me to be able to see what's going on. And so sitting up in the outfield, I'm not going to really see anything. Right. Or even really more than 10 or 15 rows back, it's kind of all the same to me. So if I'm in a place where there's a box where I've got a TV or something near me, that makes it better. But then, sitting in a box that's pretty rich. I don't know how many, can't afford to do that all the time. But we got into this groove at Texas Tech baseball games where the row immediately behind the visiting on deck circle, the row, like there was like 5 seats right, the first row up, right behind the visiting on deck circle was open. So like we would go to, I don't know, we probably went to 20 or 30 games, I would guess. And people, I think, just thought those were our seats. And it was awesome. And for
those
me,
are good seats.
I could see the players because we were so close. They're great seats. You can see the field. You're looking out at the field.
the other
and well, the heckler. So there, I learned about the heckling at the college level, and so there was professional hecklers there. I mean, that was called the Tech hecklers, and they were good. They were really good. And so we were sitting pretty close to them. Kind of got to know them a little bit, and it was fun listening to all their shtick and all the stuff that they did. But we were so close to the game that I could really see a lot. I did have my my radio ears in, so I could hear it too. But we were sitting, because we were so close and right behind basically the batter, there's a net right in front of us. Like I could reach out and touch the net. So that for me was like the safety mechanism that I knew I wasn't going to get by a foul ball. And if it was going to be a foul ball, it would have to go way up in the air, and there would be 10 people around me all trying to get it, and we'd all have plenty of time to adjust to it. So those were my best baseball games right there. I mean, the
net makes all the difference in the world. That net is much needed, and every year Major League Baseball makes different rules and extends that net. And watching minor league baseball here in town, it's now been extended so far. It's so great because I think it extends all the way to the far edge of each dugout, which is pretty far down the line. I mean, that's a lot of net. So it's a lot more space where you can enjoy the game without worrying about getting hit by a line drive. Like you said, if it comes up and over, that's one thing.
And I don't think the net really interferes with the vision or the sight. I mean, obviously the net's there, but you can see through it. And the posts would probably be the biggest issues, but the posts are generally pretty far spread apart. So I think, why don't we take it all the way down to the foul post?
I think they should. They
probably
will. I mean,
yeah.
Different parks can do whatever they want, I guess. But I mean, it's funny because every year when we reset our seats, we're like, as long as we're behind the net, we like to be behind the net and just a little offset from home plate. But that's my biggest thing for baseball seats is just behind the net. But that's mostly for my little kids. But we still get a lot of balls back there. It's just not as fast moving. You have a few seconds to react and see it coming and move if you want to move.
Yeah, that type of foul ball is fun because people are going for it and having fun with it. But it's the screamer down the third base line that knocks somebody's jawbone off is not the one you want.
Yeah. Well, we started this talking about getting knocked in the head, and we finished this talked about getting knocked in the head. So
that's probably a pretty good way to leave it.
It's come full circle on our sports talk.
But I don't know if we covered all the sports, so maybe we'll do it again.
Yeah, I mean, anytime. I'm always up for chatting about sports. I actually have a lot of notes and research that we didn't get to that we can talk about another time. I want to talk about all these popular sports for people with vision impairments and that I learned about that I didn't know. So we can do that another time.
We'll do that the next time.
Yep.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, John.
Thanks for spending time with the Ambiguously Blind podcast. Please rate and write a review wherever you subscribe. And for a complete transcript of this episode, connect and share with us at ambiguouslyblind.com.